Howard Lutnick, a key figure in the current administration, the Commerce Secretary. This is a name that has come up again and again and again in the Jeffrey Epstein saga with the release of all these files. And now he's agreed to testify before the House committee digging into Jeffrey Epstein's network of connections. The problem? Lutnick has said he cut ties with Epstein more than 2 decades ago, but newly released documents may tell a very different story. Time to make sense of what we can expect here as we do a full deep dive into the Howard Lutnick alleged connection to the accused sex trafficker. Time once again to talk about Howard Lutnick, who has become such a central figure in the Jeffrey Epstein discussion, and particularly now. The current Commerce Secretary is going to testify in front of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform that has been investigating this whole Epstein matter. I mean, they just released the videotaped depositions of Bill and Hillary Clinton. And by the way, we'll get to it a little bit later, but he's mentioned in that. So why Lutnick? Why does this matter? Why does he matter? Well, for a lot of reasons. I mean, first, he's currently a major figure in the current Trump administration. And two, his alleged ties to Epstein raise a lot of questions, particularly when you look at the timing and you look at his statements on his association with the disgraced, deceased sex offender financier. And I want to explore what the Epstein files reveal about Lutnick's perceived connection with Epstein. And by the way, in anticipation of his testimony, I want to lay out what we know here, what he could be asked, how he might respond. Because here's the problem. You see, Lutnick, the wealthy businessman who was the former chairman of the financial services firm Cantor Fitzgerald, was neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein in New York City. And the issue for Lutnick is that he went on a podcast last year, the Podforce One podcast, and said that he and his wife decided to no longer associate with Epstein in 2005. That they met Epstein in October 2005, went to visit his home, got a tour. By the way, this is the place where there were allegations of abuse. And the Lutnicks, according to him, apparently see this massage table. There are candles around it. Epstein, according to him, made sexually suggestive comments. And Lutnick said that he got creeped out, said on the pod, and in the 6 to 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross. So I look back at it as a gift. He gave me a gift. This is the problem. Lutnick actually admitted, and this was in a Senate hearing last month, he was in contact with Jeffrey Epstein and traveled to his private island, Little St. James Island, years after he originally said he cut ties with him. Oh, and I haven't even gotten into the emails, okay? So while Lutnick said to the Senate Appropriations Committee, or the subcommittee, I did not have any relationship with him, I barely had anything to do with that person, okay? And I did not have anything you could call a relationship, anything you could call an acquaintance. I literally met him 3 times over 14 years, okay? But with that, you got things like this. Like this apparent 2012 email from Lutnick, or seemingly from Lutnick, to Epstein. Hi, Jeff. We're landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon and planning to head over to St. Bart's, Anguilla on Monday at some point. Where are you located? What is the exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? I have another couple, Michael and Marcy Lehrman, with me on my boat, and each of us has 4 children, 2 16s, 2 14s, a 13, a 12, an 11, and a 7-year-old. Thanks, Howard. Response back. Below from Jeffrey. Come Saturday or Sunday lunch. Little St. James on the map, behind Chrisman's Cove. By the way, a little side note on that. It was reported by outlets like CBS that there was a photo seemingly showing Lutnick with Epstein on the island that was published as part of the Epstein Files release. We got a hold of it ourselves. It's in the actual Epstein Files DOJ library. And the problem with that, it was reported that it was removed and then it was republished. And what it appears to be is Lutnick standing by an oceanside cliff with Epstein and a couple other people. But here's the thing too. There are communications either between the two, involving the two, that extended all the way into 2018, the year before Epstein's arrest on federal sex trafficking charges. How about this email that Howard Lutnick had apparently sent? Are you aware as to them building to block our park views? What should we do about it? Time is of the essence. Again, this is back in 2018. Now, Epstein eventually writes back to his assistant regarding this message, no, I was not, meaning no, he wasn't aware. Now that communication actually continues with Lutnick writing, "You should put in a letter. I'm sending a lawyer. Don't ignore this. They will build exactly across from you, 1, a bus and group entrance, 2, a loading dock for party rentals used almost every weekend, 3, a massive building to block your sunlight and views. They are trying to jam it through. It matters that we fight. My real estate lawyer is attending and will vehemently object. Write a letter and send a lawyer. Delay at least so they don't pass it tomorrow. Supposedly the chairperson retires tomorrow after this meeting. Do it must be stopped. If they want more space, why not buy the adjacent building, townhouse gallery on 70th, which is for sale?" And the response back to Lutnick from a redacted says, "Jeffrey has responded, will do." You see, the biggest issue or challenge facing Lutnick and why you have heard calls for his resignation is not just the seemingly about-face, but also that he apparently maintained some level of contact with Epstein or was in Epstein's orbit after Epstein had already been convicted in Florida in 2008 on charges of solicitation of prostitution, including that of a minor. That's what separates him from the Clintons, because they didn't appear to have contact with Jeffrey Epstein after all that. And there doesn't appear to be any active criminal investigation into Howard Lutnick, okay? No one's suggesting that he allegedly participated in anything that Epstein was up to. But the connection matters. You know, the Lutnick name appears in more than 240 entries in the Epstein library on the DOJ website. Obviously, we got to talk about this. And now he's going to testify. I mean, you go all the way back to 2009. I found this email that was sent to Epstein. "Howard Lutnick would like to speak to you. One of his employees asked me if Howard could have your number so he may call you. Would you like me to give him your number?" They did not give me Howard's number. Again, this is the year after that 2008 conviction. Now, before I go any further, okay, how about this? This is important to note too. Lutnick's name appears in a child exploitation and human trafficking task force PowerPoint presentation about the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. This is in the Epstein files. He is listed under prominent names, and it says, Howard Lutnick. Redacted reported that Lutnick made his money through Ponzi schemes and money laundering. Lutnick and Epstein were neighbors, and Epstein sold Lutnick a home for 10, which was then sold for millions. Now, again, this seems to be allegations that were compiled in this PowerPoint presentation, but it's significant. I had to mention it. So now I want to go through some of the emails, and I'll take it year by year. 2011, a lot of communications in 2011. So this one, for example, is from Epstein's assistant, Leslie Groff, who appears a lot in the Epstein files, to Epstein. It says, "Howard Lutnick will come see you at 5 p.m. on Sunday, May 1st. How about this? Calendar appointments. This document, seemingly for Epstein in 2011. 5 p.m. appointment with Howard Lutnick, drinks." There was an email sent to Jeffrey Epstein on May 2nd, 2011 from Redacted. "The phone was Howard Lutnick's. It has been collected." Another 2011 communication. Look at this email sent to Epstein. "Howard Lutnick is on an airplane headed overseas. His office would like to know if you would like to set up a call while he is away or if you prefer to speak with him on Monday, April 4th when he is back." And it continues. Epstein was told in a 2011 email, "Howard Lutnick returned your call." Another email sent to Epstein. "Also, Howard Lutnick is available today from 10 to 2 in the office. I will add him to our list today." Later on in 2011, you have this one from Epstein's assistant, again, Leslie Groff to Epstein. "FYI, Howard Lutnick's assistant called asking if you would be available to speak with Howard today." Now, to be clear, we don't know the substance of these conversations and whether or not these meetings happened. But you're seeing it, right? You're seeing these connections. You need an explanation for why Lutnick seemingly wanted to be in contact with Epstein and maybe vice versa. What was going on here? Then you go back to 2012. I mentioned that whole visit to Epstein's Island. There's more communication about that from Lutnick's wife, Allison Lutnick. So she apparently emails Epstein's assistant, again, Leslie Groff, says, "Hi, Leslie. We are heading towards you from St. Thomas. Where should we anchor exactly? What is your phone number?" The response back, "Hi, Allison. Great to hear you're headed over. I'm actually not on the island. I just spoke to Redacted, and Redacted will be sending you an email with more instructions. I think they need to know what kind of boat you are on so they can instruct you properly. Thanks and have a great day, Leslie." And the response back, 188-foot yacht. Now, more from that year, like this email from Epstein's assistant to Lutnick. "Good morning, Howard. Jeffrey wished me to pass along the below to you. Nice seeing you. Please read number 2.3. So again, does become a question how often they saw each other, how often they talked on the phone. What about 2013? Now this is significant. Lutnick and Epstein both appear to be signatories on a contract, a stock purchase agreement. CBS News reports that they signed on behalf of LLCs, limited liability companies, to acquire an ownership stake in an ad technology company called Adfin. So you're seeing what appears to be not just personal, but business aspects of the relationship too. Although, I will be clear about this, there is a source close to Howard Lutnick who told CBS News, quote, Cantor Fitzgerald, and remember this is the firm that Lutnick had worked at, Cantor Fitzgerald was a small minority investor in Adfin. At the time of doing the deal, as a minority investor, Mr. Lutnick would not have any knowledge of who the other investors were. True. Although I do wonder if he had a copy of the agreement, would he have seen that Jeffrey Epstein was on there? I don't know, just something to think about. What about this? From Epstein's accountant Richard Kahn to Epstein. Attached is a resume of Lutnick Nanny. I am trying to arrange a time via Peter for you to meet her. Got another 2013 email. Epstein was asked, what is your view on Howard Lutnick? Just met him with PA. And Epstein responds, my neighbor, smart. Didn't say, don't really know him. Didn't really say, no idea. He's my neighbor. I don't really talk. But my neighbor, smart. 2015, Lutnick apparently invites Epstein to a Hillary Clinton fundraiser. 2017, Epstein apparently contributes to honoring Howard Lutnick. This is an email from Epstein's assistant. So this email is from 2017. Hello, Amanda. Jeffrey Epstein will be contributing to the UJA Wall Street dinner honoring Howard Lutnick. Can you please provide an address to where we can FedEx a check to? Whose attention? Anything else we should know? Reportedly, Epstein ended up donating $50,000. And you look at this email from, again, Epstein's former accountant, Richard Kahn. It says, Amanda, check from Jeffrey will be from his foundation, Gratitude America, in the amount of $50,000. Now, there's more communication about that one from Epstein to himself, by the way, where Epstein sends an email to a John Paulson, who apparently was UJA's chairman of its Wall Street and Financial Services division, writing, $50K from me. Hope PR is okay. Then you get a response from a David Ratner days later, who also appears to work or affiliated with UJA Federation of New York. Hi, Jeffrey. Many thanks for your incredible donation in honor of Howard Lutnick. Would you like to take an ad and offer your own words of congratulations in our commemorative journal? Are you able to join us at the event itself on December 11th? And would you like to take a table, inclusive of your generosity? Thank you. And then, of course, when we go to 2018, I mentioned before that whole correspondence about the building, and if they're constructing something around it, it's going to obstruct the views, all that. Here's the problem. How does Howard Lutnick explain these connections and communications given his prior statements, particularly when he's going to be under oath and under penalty of perjury? Now, to be very clear, I'm not saying that he's going to lie. I'm not saying that he's going to misrepresent the facts or the timeline, but clearly there appear to be discrepancies in his statements and the timeline. And that is something that he's going to have to address, particularly since there is even more renewed attention on him after more files are being released and people, and by the way, members of Congress have had more time to digest and analyze them. And this is interesting. I mentioned that Lutnick testified in front of the Senate. Well, he was grilled by Senator Chris Van Hollen, who said, quote, the issue is not that you engaged in any wrongdoing in connection with Jeffrey Epstein, but that you totally misrepresented the extent of your relationship with him to the Congress, to the American people, and to the survivors of his despicable criminal and predatory acts. Now, here's what Lutnick had to say at that hearing.
Probably the total, and you've seen all of these documents, of these millions and millions of documents, there may be 10 emails connecting me with him, probably about 10 emails connecting me with him over a 14-year period. I did not have any relationship with him. I barely had anything to do with that person, okay?
But again, is that true? Yes, there's nothing in the emails that suggests something nefarious, but it does raise other questions of why he would want to stay in touch with somebody who was convicted of sex crimes, and why, by the way, Epstein would want an association with him. Did he just think that Howard Lutnick is smart, he liked him personally, or is it about wealth? Is it about power? Is it about status? It's always a question of what Epstein was after. Why was he trying to make these connections? Now, Lutnick will probably testify in the same fashion from the way he spoke to the Senate, if I had to guess, right? Now, I will say it could be difficult to impeach his credibility, particularly when you're talking about events from so many years ago, but it might be tough unless they have some sort of emails or text messages or witnesses to come forward and suggest that there's more to the story than what Howard Lutnick testifies to. But again, this isn't Congress filing criminal charges. They don't have the ability to do that. They can refer a criminal matter to the DOJ if they believe there's evidence of that. But their whole goal is to try to get an understanding of the whole Epstein saga, provide more transparency to the American public. And really, their goal is to see if there needs to be a change in the law. Does there need to be a reform of the law to prevent Epstein 2.0, to address any gaps in what might have happened? And again, just to get more information about this. And I think that it might be also difficult when you're talking about Howard Lutnick. Will he provide the responses that provide more answers here? Maybe, maybe not. But look, him coming in is a big deal. And as chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, said, Secretary Lutnick has proactively agreed to appear voluntarily before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform for a transcribed interview. I commend his demonstrated commitment to transparency and appreciate his willingness to engage with the committee. I look forward to his testimony. So you don't even have the issue of a subpoena or enforcing a subpoena that would be necessary here. He's gonna come in voluntarily. You had a Commerce Department spokesperson who said in a statement, this is nothing more than a failing attempt by the legacy media to distract from the administration's accomplishments, including securing trillions of dollars in investment, delivering historic trade deals, and fighting for the American worker. Mr. and Mrs. Lutnick met Jeffrey Epstein in 2005 and had very limited interactions with him over the next 14 years. White House spokesperson Kush Desai said President Trump maintains complete confidence in Secretary Lutnick because he has been the most transformative commerce secretary in modern history and is a champion of the president's America First trade and tariffs policies. Now, another way to view this is what Representative Thomas Massie said about Lutnick. Basically said Lutnick said he knew Jeffrey Epstein was a despicable, abhorrent human being and had nothing to do with him, and then he partied on his island with his kids with this guy. How do you trust that guy? By the way, when former Secretary of State, First Lady Hillary Clinton, was deposed in front of this committee and her videotaped deposition was released, she was asked about Howard Lutnick, and it got tense.
Did it concern you at all that Ghislaine Maxwell was heavily involved with people you knew and were close to?
I knew people that I knew her. Yes, that's true.
And you just shrugged, you didn't want to look into it or
nobody,
question about it?
until her crimes were revealed and she was indicted and tried and convicted, I don't think people knew very much about at all what she was doing.
And then how do you know Howard Lutnick?
I know Howard Lutnick because when I was senator on 9/11, the firm he headed, Cantor Fitzgerald, suffered the greatest loss of life. As I recall, something like 650 of his employees were murdered by terrorists that day. Howard Lutnick missed being a victim because he was delayed dropping his child off to kindergarten. You asked the question. I'm going to answer your question.
Now you're going to yell
This
at
was
me?
what I spent
You're
my
going to yell at
time
me.
doing.
I'm a survivor trying to look out for other survivors trying to
and I was taking care of the people who lost 3,000 lives
and now you're being
at World
defiant
Trade
and
Center.
indignant today.
You asked me
I have
about
met
Howard
with Epstein
Lutnick.
survivors. I'm a survivor myself. You have emails. You've denied that Jeffrey Epstein, that you tried to get JeffreyEpstein to give money to you.
I did
but
not.
Howard Lutnick was
If
used
you
to
have an
get
email
money.
with me asking Jeffrey
I
Epstein
have
for
an
money,
email from Howard Lutnick sending it to Jeffrey Epstein and his people to raise money for
I don't
you
know about
for an event, an intimate event for you at his offices at Cantor Fitzgerald. You're going to sit here today and obfuscate and say to this committee, you didn't try to get money from Jeffrey Epstein when there was an intimate event in an email that Howard Lutnick emailed to Epstein's people and Epstein to get him to come to your intimate event at Cantor Fitzgerald, a very small event. And so I'm not going to public. You want to yell at me, that's fine, but I'll yell right back.
Well,
okay? I am looking out for
it's
survivors.
very-
I'm doing
look-
the job that you would not do and refuse to do as Secretary of State. Thank you, and I yield back to
No,
Congresswoman.
I'm going to finish answering the question, which I have a right to do. I am very sympathetic to your personal situation. I have read about it. I have seen you testify or speak on the floor about it. And I very much sympathize with not only what you went through, but appreciate your effort to stand up for survivors. I was a senator representing the people who were murdered on 9/11. Nobody lost more people than Howard Lutnick. You can say whatever you want. You can call him and have him appear before the committee. But I knew him as the man who lost the employees that he knew intimately, including his brother.
And he was
So I worked.
you and
Let her
Jeffrey
finish
Epstein
her
raising
answer,
money
please.
for you.
Let her finish her answer.
You know what?
Hey, don't move! What the hell are you doing here? I'm getting gas, sir, that's it. Step the hell back from the vehicle. Now! I'm active duty Marine. I can show ID if you want. Damn about your ID. Turn around. Hands visible.
The body cam timestamp reads 21:43. Fluorescent gas station lights buzzing like insects in the Texas heat. A black man in desert camouflage stands beside his car, hands visible, posture drilled by years of discipline. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't flinch. The officer does. Within 12 minutes, a decorated U.S. Marine is face down on concrete, accused of resisting an order that was never lawful to begin with. By morning, the Pentagon is calling, and someone's career and freedom is already over. But before this story unfolds, take a moment to stay with it. Stories like this don't survive on outrage alone. They survive because people choose to witness them. Subscribe, not for drama, but to follow the truth wherever it leads. A gas station sat just off the highway, a rectangle of white light floating in the dark like a stage with no audience. Trucks hissed past in the distance, the smell of fuel mixed with burnt coffee and hot asphalt. It was 9:43 p.m., according to the timestamp later pulled from surveillance footage, the kind of ordinary hour when nothing is supposed to happen. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reed stepped out of his car slowly, the way muscle memory had taught him to move. His uniform was clean but worn, desert camo softened by years of washing, name tape stitched straight across his chest. He had just finished a 12-hour drive back from a training facility in Oklahoma, orders folded neatly in his glove compartment. He needed gas, caffeine, and 10 quiet minutes before the road again. Inside the store, the bell chimed. Outside, another sound cut through the night tires crunching on gravel. A low engine idle that didn't belong to the highway. A patrol car rolled in and stopped at an angle that felt deliberate. Marcus noticed it without turning his head. He felt the familiar tightening in his shoulders, the silent calculation. Hands visible. Posture neutral. No sudden movements. He had learned those rules long before the Marine Corps, but the Corps had perfected them into instinct. The officer stepped out slowly. Male. Early 30s. One hand resting on his belt, close enough to the holster to be noticed without being obvious. The body cam was already on. "Hey," the officer said, voice clipped. Not raised but sharp. "What are you doing here?" Marcus paused. He turned halfway, enough to be seen clearly, enough to show the uniform. "Getting gas, sir." The word sir came automatically. It always did. The officer's eyes flicked down, then back up, not lingering on the uniform long enough to register respect. His gaze hardened instead. "You live around here?" the officer asked. Marcus shook his head once, just passing through. The officer took a step closer. The distance closed fast inside what Marines call reactionary gas.